So, you know this new Scottish hate crimes or hate speech or whatever. As with the other things I've been going through, it actually is illegal. I think it's illegal and unlawful. Doesn't matter whether they've done it in Parliament or not. All the privileges, you can still prosecute for corrupt and illegal practices. And it said that you could never question the affairs of Parliament, right, until they made the 1688 Bill of Rights with the right to petition. And it gave indemnity to that. Omission from indemnity. So effectively, then you could question Parliament through the right to petition. Now, it says that illegal prosecutions by the King's Bench for matters decidable, debatable in Parliament. But that's why you've got the House of Lords there. The House of Lords are meant to be there to keep Parliament in check. You can actually get you can actually get impeachments in Parliament. And they've been doing that in America, which is based on the same principle. I think the Scottish Government have broken the law. They don't have the right to do certain things. And I'll tell you why and how. Under the 1688 Bill of Rights, there are certain freedoms and liberties of the realm. The freedoms and liberties of the realm, if you break those, it actually says that this is illegal, unlawful. So that is a illegal practice. So corrupt and illegal practices are ones that can be prosecuted even though there's privilege, and they still have to face trial, even if it's from even Supreme Court or House of Lords or whatever. I think that they can be prosecuted in Parliament by their equals or put a bill through to have them impeached. But most definitely, in the 1688 Bill of Rights, there are 3 criteria of persons who can subvert the liberties of the realm. And that is ministers, councillors and judges, right? So judges can subvert the liberty of the realm by denying rights, okay? And ministers and councillors. So that means that all those items in the 1688 Bill of Rights, they're actually corrupt and illegal practices that the ministers in Parliament and the councillors can do, right? We're not talking about out and about, when they're going shopping or, driving somewhere or, if they get done for drugs possession in their own private time. We're talking about actually for their conduct in Parliament. And those Bill of Rights clauses are enforced against the people who might offend them, who might break those rights. And that is ministers in government, councillors and judges, right? So, and the freedom of speech is in the Bill of Rights. Free speech, but the thing with the Bill of Rights, I will concede, is that it is in connection with political speech and meetings to do with politics, like in the Public Meeting Act, if it's a political meeting or for elections and so forth, not just business or other meetings. But in America, I'm pretty sure they give freedom of speech to everyone in America. Now, the thing is that I think Biden was popping up in Ireland the other day, showing off. I think that guy, the Irish Prime Minister, I think he stood down. But then the Scottish Government have just gone now and put this hate speech act through, or bill, right? The thing is that the Public Order Act 2023, what Priti Patel has put out, it's just nonsensical. I think a lot of the ministers now are putting things through that are in error and wrong and don't work. And I've actually found evidence in Hansard that in many sessions when they're talking about bills and putting bills through, they're just lying. They're just telling lies. Like, they lied that there wasn't any Public Order Act 1908. They lied and said that it wasn't, that it didn't exist when it actually did exist, and they were in Parliament. So that's a corrupt and legal practice, because what they're doing is they're actually, to put bills through in Parliament, they're actually lying and telling lies. Now, in order to have indemnity and even privilege, you have to tell the truth. If you lie or don't tell the truth, you actually forfeit it, and that is not only for legal proceedings, but this is for election fraud and things like that. And that's like a government election fraud. If it's a parliamentary election, is in connection with a Parliament and the affairs of Parliament, right? And privilege doesn't prevent you from those proceedings. So putting bills through, actually, it can be judged by the Lords, whether you want to say it's in the Supreme Court or not, that if they actually put a bill through and they lied, then it can be invalidated. The thing is that there are, like when they think they can make any laws up, right? They can't, because in the Bill of the Bill of Rights is like evil ministers. Well, ministers work in the government, in Parliament, councillors in the council, and judges in the courts. If they subvert any of those rights that are listed out, that's a corrupt and legal practice. I think that they think that they can make or change the rights, or can change the law, but they actually can't. People need to understand this. I think J.K. Rowling was on the other day. I'm not the greatest fan of J.K. Rowling, just because, I don't, dislike the Harry Potter films. I quite enjoyed them, but, it's like the whole, gross excess, money and stuff, fame and all this. And I'm not, to be honest, I probably wouldn't have had an opinion about J.K. Rowling. It's not really someone who's on my radar. Until all that, sexual business to do with, debates and arguments over gender and all that, it's a bit of a turn-off, really. I don't really, all that, to me, the whole subject is nonsense, so I don't even really when J.K. Rowling apparently was involved in all that debate, whatever, to be honest, I don't really know what J.K. Rowling's position is, to be honest, because I've not looked into it, and I'm not really interested in what her opinion is, because I just think the whole subject is that ridiculous that I don't really want to touch upon that subject. But when it's free speech, I will touch upon the subject. Apparently J.K. Rowling's been speaking out against the Scottish Government and putting that bill through. I'm quite surprised if she is, supposedly this wealthy, up in the stratosphere, sort of apparently I don't know whether this is true or not, but at one point it said that J.K. Rowling had more money than the Queen or whatever, but I don't know whether that's true or not. But she's up there with quite a lot of extremely wealthy people. I don't know whether she's, in Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and Elon Musk's kind of zone of wealth, but she's quite wealthy, so she's not short of lawyers. I know that Donald Trump uses lawyers a lot. He's literally got them working for him all the time, so he get them to do this and he can get them to do that, and he can, the thing with lawyers is you pay for them for time, If you've got them full time, at least doing this or that, you can just set them to work doing one thing or the other, I know that it does drain quite a lot of Donald Trump's money, but he always ends up, doing some sort of gimmick his trainers or playing cards or something to recover money or whatever. But if J.K. Rowling is serious about the law, serious about free speech, and serious about opposing the Scottish Government, the thing is that what I was saying to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is that a lot of these companies and businesses, like global elites, if the government make or change laws that they don't like or affect their future profits, they've got these special courts that they take them to and sue them, right? But you can do that. You don't have to be a company to do that, because what about the people? What about things that affect the people's health, the future? This is what I've said to Robert F. Kennedy, like the future health of the people, the projected. If the government aren't keeping these companies under control, and it's affected, the diabetic projection for the future, or the cancerous projection, then surely you can sue them equally, because it's like the projected future health. And with all the adverts and psychology they're using to influencer stuff, even, the supermarket placement and all of it, they actually have attempted to try and get people to buy more and eat these things. And then, rather than just come back with one cake or one bun, you come back with a pack, and then you end up eating them. And even they've been talking about these ultra-processed foods where they've got these sweet spots where they mix amounts of sugar in, so people will... It all affects the taste and, the desire to... But a lot of them, it doesn't really properly fill you up, so, like, you're satisfied for a while, but then you get addicted and want more. All that figuring into the whole food industry and thing, it's impossible to think that you couldn't sue them. If merely on the basis of a profit margin, right, is the reason why these companies sue the government, they make law that harms their profit margins. So all you do is replace profit margin for health margin, right? And in the health margin, but then the business will say, well, there's people that have to buy it. But you prove that they're trying to get people to buy it. They're surrounding them by the things on all sides. They've got billboards in the streets, in the pavements. You can't even walk down the street without having to walk around these JC Decor billboards. And then now the government are claiming that they're wanting to remove tramps from the streets. People who are homeless and have been forced down and out because they don't like this world around them that's being built. It's a harmful environment. What they're actually doing is they're prioritising not even a product, and not even like a premises or a shop. Fair enough if someone, damages a shop or a shop window, but even the advertisements and even the references to advertisements they're putting in this, they've got more precedence to commercial advertising and billboards than actually bills that are there to try and get people to oppose laws or change laws or protect rights, like commercial billboards, And at that point now, I don't think that they're the ones claiming that, behaviour needs to be controlled or conduct needs to be controlled, but there's a basis of elections and voting where everyone is called and everyone can express their opinion, right, and vote. There's definitely some... I don't think really it's the peers that are voting, because the political parties have actually ended up hijacking a lot of the political opinion. And there's another argument I've got where political parties actually can't possibly exist. They're illogical, and when it comes to once councillors are all elected into council, firstly, a lot of them have been breaking the law by participating in elections, and then they're not supposed to, unless you can if you're a candidate, but it's the political party and the volunteers and the agent who are supposed to help with the election, not people in government with a title. They can't help their pals up onto the podium with pull them up onto the podium, give them a hand up. They're not allowed to lend a hand. I think they can vote. They can go into the polling station and make a mark on paper and vote, but they're not allowed to influence the other electors. When you go into the polling station and go into the booth and that lot, you're not influencing the other electors. That's a lot of the political parties. But the thing is, I wanted to talk about the dictionary and hate crimes, but I'm having to kind of go into other stuff now. I didn't really want to go into elections. I've ended up going into elections a bit, but effectively, right, as soon as they get into the council, right, they've got this policy where you've got to be selfless, right? Now, that means you can't have your own opinion. You're meant to be representing the opinion of the people who elected you, right? Now, if you like have a load of people, right, and say like you've got a load of I was thinking of the Star Trek model, you know, like for the teleporter room or something, or you stand on like loads, like, you know, so effectively, right, if the people who get elected into the council, right, and they stand like on a spot, if you think of stand on a coloured spot, right, and when they stand on that spot, they forfeit their opinion, their own, they have to be selfless, right? And then you get all the councillors who stood on these spots. At the moment they stand on their spots, say that they were all wearing like, you know, red or blue jackets for Labour or Conservative who were elected, right? As soon as they stand on their spots, they have to change their jackets for white jackets, right? Or cream or whatever colour you want. It could be brown or whatever, doesn't really matter. So like, we'll just say like, you know, pink, right? So like, if they all had to take their jackets off, like their Tory and Labour jackets, once they were elected, because they have to be selfless. And so you can't have a political party control logically on the council. It scientifically and logically can't be possible. It's kind of like illusionary. And therefore, you can't have a party political control of the council. It can't exist. Really, the political party is kind of an illusion. Now, when you've got these Conservative Party headquarters and Labour Party headquarters, and they're meant to be in charge of the MPs and telling them what to do, or in charge of the political party and the policies, right? As soon as you're elected, you can't have an opinion coming from a party headquarters, whether it's Tory or Labour. It can't logically work. I've worked this out. And therefore, they can't be taking instructions. I mean, some of the Green Party candidates or councillors have always said, we don't take orders from, you know, any headquarters like Labour or Tory, you know, we don't, you know, we say, well, what's the point in voting for a party? Well, really, it's about, you know, they've got certain things that they're meant to represent or that they're meant to stand for, right? Certain principles. But those party principles, they're all really in the councillor or in the person, right? This person stands for this or this person stands for that. So really, what it comes down to through pure logic is that the councillor is saying that I'm like a person who's more into the environment, or I'm a person who's more into, you know, if it's like, you know, Conservative businesses and companies, or Labour, or, you know, I support the workers. But once they are elected and then they have to shed their, you know, Green Party jacket, you know, and put like the neutral, well, we'll call it neutral, or without opinion. They don't even have their own opinion, so they can't really stand for anything, right? And the thing is that, therefore, really, what can only be legally possible, according to all the policies and the election rules, is that really what only is legally allowed to be possible is that for any given electoral area, it only is the voters basically who you know, the people who won the vote, or, you know, a certain person was elected because they were more popular. All it translates to is that, for example, if the Green Party win, right, all it means is that a lot of the electors in an area care about the countryside and care about the environment and those sort of things, right? Or you could say if the Conservatives win, more people are bothered about, business and enterprise. Or if you say the Labour Party won, more people care about the workers. That is all it translates to. But the thing is that so that just means they've got support to a certain area, has a tendency to support certain things. But for all decisions in the council, or where there's got to be a vote from the councillors or electors, right? Whenever there's an opinion or a vote in the council, or we'll call this is got to be the same model for Parliament as well, right? What happens is that whenever there's like a planning application or something where you enter a say, well, all of the people who voted for... I had this thing called like a default setting or a precedent, like, the majority of people in a village that councillor's been elected. But if they haven't got opinion, you can't have a predisposed opinion about anything because you would have to have... If you're selfless, you can't have an opinion on one single matter until you ask the electorate on that matter. Because otherwise, if you think about it, on a planning application, right, there is no planning application till someone puts in planning. Now, what they're doing is it's like a court. They used to do planning in the courts, by the way. The planning applications used to go through the civil courts until like the mid-1800s or something around that time, right? It was all dealt with through the courts until like put into the council. Now, the thing with the council is that they're elected people who have to kind of... Well, the thing with the jury is they do have an opinion. The jury are meant to have an opinion, but only because we've elected them to have an opinion on behalf of everyone else. The jury's opinion is they're meant to make an opinion on behalf of all the public, right? Like the jurors were elected. So the jurors were deciding all the planning applications at one point, right? Before the 1800s. So that would be like everyone in the village elects jurats, the jury, to turn up and make decisions on things like planning orders on their behalf, right? So that it's still the opinion of the local people, right? But in those persons, like narrowed down into those persons, right? And you've still got in court, you've got the applicant, the claimant, the plaintiff, and then you've got those opposed, right? And then the jury decide. It's actually meant to be the people deciding, but through those personifications, right? Those jurats. Now, what happened is we elect councillors now, and all of the planning matters from the court have gone into the council. But it's the exact same basis. The councillors are elected like the jury, to have our opinion. Now, the thing is, the thing with the jury is that you can't really have a selfless... Well, the jury are meant to be neutral, but, it wouldn't work if they were selfless and had no opinion because they wouldn't be able to come out with a verdict, right? But really, the verdict is kind of meant to be on behalf of all the people, really, but it's impossible to ask everyone. Well, it isn't now because you can have, like, referendums. Now, the thing is that you still have, like, the applicant. Remember that this is not crime. This is not criminal law, right? This is civil because it was in the Court of Requests. Court of Civil Requests is like a planning application. So it's like a civil request, really, right? They had Court of Civil Requests. Now, so when you've got the council, really, the councillors are kind of like jurats. But if they didn't have now the thing is, when someone applies for something like planning permission, they might not even be from the party that got elected, right? So if you say if the Green Party elected a councillor, or if the Green Party elected all the councillors, right, when someone comes in to put planning permission, they might be Conservative, so they might not even be Labour or Green anyway. So they're like, that's an independent and separate case, right? And what happens is that you're allowed to put objections in. Now, the thing is, it doesn't matter who's elected the councillors. It doesn't matter who's elected the councillors, because they can't have an opinion on something, really, until someone turns up and puts an application in or brings a case. It would be like having an opinion on crime before there were any criminals. You can't say, oh, we don't like robbers, so we're opposed to them, right? Because if everyone was opposed to, if everyone thought all robbers were guilty, right, before anyone committed a crime, and then they go into court, that won't be too good. The jurats are kind of supposed to be neutral, and that's why you've got a selection of them, and they're meant to be representing the public. You couldn't have the jurats saying, everyone's guilty of theft before they've heard their evidence. So you can't have no matter who voted for any councillors, you can't say, the automatic default setting on all the councillors' decisions or opinions are going to be on the majority of who voted them in, because until you have a claimant with a case and evidence, no one's seen that evidence. No one's seen the evidence laid on the table. So you can't have an opinion without seeing the evidence or without seeing the case for each individual matter. So you can't automatically say, we're all going to vote oppose building, or even be for building, or whatever it is, just like you can't say, we're going to convict all the robbers regardless of the evidence. So actually, the electors and the voters are not granted an automatic precedence on all council decisions until the evidence is laid and they have to act in response to each matter, surely, or it can't possibly work, because each applicant or claimant of civil requests effectively has different evidence for every single case, and it has to be judged on the merits of the evidence of the case and the opinion of the peers. Now, this is where this is a bit crafty for the political parties, because if the political parties themselves, can you imagine if you had a jury in a court, right, in a criminal court, and they were all Green Party or something like that, the jury, right, they were all Green Party. And can you imagine, right, if this, like Magna Carta, can be judged through lawful due process, but judged either by the law and legislation or by the opinion of the peers, right? What I think is kind of happening is that, like with the Ian Bray case, when he completely disregarded Gregory Perrin's, there's no legislation for this or legal principle, so they ignored it. They totally ignored the illegal principle and said, we don't care, Ian Bray's not guilty. So that's like in Magna Carta. That's what Extinction Rebellion are arguing about now in all the courts when they get prosecuted and come out with, not guilty verdicts, because the jury disregarded the legislation and just acted on their opinion. Now, the judges don't like this because, they just disregard the law. And some of the judges have been misleading the jury and saying that they can't judge it on their opinion, their conscience. But on Magna Carta, it says you can. That's like in the Ian Bray case. Now, let's go to the council model, right? Let's go to the council model. I just want you to imagine for a moment, this is just like just to try and understand a little bit more what's going on. If you imagine... like the council with all the councillors, and then you've got the chairman at the front and so forth. Imagine all the councillors are sat in the jury box just for a second, right? And then everyone else can go in and say, people of the town and city can go in and watch and sit on benches, and they're allowed to go up and speak and so forth. And then you've got the person who's going there making their case or who've put the planning application in, right? Imagine all the councillors are kind of sat on the jury thing, because effectively I've realised that the councillors sort of are effectively the jury of civil requests, but it's called, they call it the council now, right? You may argue about the in and outs of it, but I just want to use that model to try and kind of get it across at the moment, right? So if the councillors can vote on a planning application either by the rule of law, whether or not the regulations, the health, the environment regulations and so forth actually apply, and the applicant has got a strong case, he can justify why he should, block everyone's views off or build bigger or whatever. Usually it's just because they can afford it and other people can't. But, there are certain regulations you've got to go by, and, whether or not the people want it or not. Now, what I think is kind of happening is that, I think that a lot of these planning things that get put through that really a lot of the people don't want, a lot of the people don't like and don't want, regardless of what political party they voted for, right? What the councillors really secretly in their minds could be seen to be doing, if you look at it, is they are being a little bit like the jury in the Ian Bray case, although that's a criminal case, but like in civil, because really the council are claiming that, it's, regulations, law, regulations, right? But if they can disregard the law, like in Magna Carta, and do it on their own opinion, they could secretly, in their opinion, right, all say, we'll just do what the Labour Party, what the Labour Party want us to do, or what the Conservative Party want us to do, or the Greens, right? And that would be disregarding the law, and it would be on an opinion of the councillors, right? They could do that because you disregard the law, the legislation and the regulations and the, legal points that the planning applicant and their lawyer put forward. And you could just go like the jury, based on your opinion, like, no, we don't want this, or yes, we do, right? But if that secret opinion in their mind is a Conservative or Tory directive or policy, it's exactly the same as the jury in the Ian Bray case, but going on the Conservative or Tory will, policies, opinion, regardless of law, but also regardless of really what the people are doing, if the people are coming in and objecting or putting an objection in or petitioning. But get this, right? The councillors can't have an opinion. It says in the policy they cannot have their own personal opinion. They have to be selfless. So they can ignore the law and regulations and rules and go on an opinion based on pure opinion. But it cannot be the political party opinion from Conservative Party headquarters in London or Labour Party headquarters in Newcastle or any policies of a political party, because they're not allowed to have an opinion, and and what their vote. So what is their opinion in their mind then if they're selfless? Well, it's the electorate who elected them to represent them. The group of people in the local town or village that elected each councillor, each jurat, they are who they're representing. They are their advocate of those persons. Now, so those persons elected them to represent them, right? Their opinion. So it can only be the opinion of those local people channeled into the councillors. Now, if a councillor got elected, right, by the Green Party, for example, you could say, well, his conscience, we'll use that word, his conscience is a Green Party conscience because he got elected by Greens. But every new case that comes into the council, just like every new case that comes into a civil court or criminal court, isn't prejudged really, because it has to be decided. There's an oath. You know, the oath of the jurats is like, we will decide every according to the evidence. They don't have to do it according to the law, because they can disregard the law, but it has to be according to the evidence of each case. Now, until the cases come into the council, you haven't seen the evidence. It can't be according to the evidence, because until Bob, Jack, John or Jill comes in with evidence of why they should be allowed to divert the river or change the forests or do that, you haven't got any evidence. So even if the councillors stroke jurats were to ignore the law and the legislation and the regulations and vote on their conscience, it can't be the conscience of a place in Newcastle with a political party headquarters, even Tice or Farage, because they're not the village and they're not the electors. They're not in the commission of the area that person's been elected to represent those people there. They're out of the commission of the area or of that electoral area. They don't live there, right? They've got to do it according to the evidence put in front of the council, but they don't have to agree with the law, right? Now, so every case isn't prejudged and every case can't be pre-decided in the council what goes before a vote. It's impossible, because it has to be judged upon the evidence, not the law. And it can be decided by conscience or law, but judged upon the evidence of each case. And until it gets put before the council, so it's impossible to have all these things already planned out by the Labour or the Tories. It can't be possible. It's impossible. Right? It's impossible, because it would be like you can't have a jury, and even the jurats, when the jury were already elected permanently, right? Like the councillors, you didn't have like a random jury coming in and then they read out the oath and then they will judge it on the evidence, and then afterwards they're discharged and then you get a different jury in, right? The councillors are like the original jury. They were like, permanently elected to represent, right? So they're already sworn in, but they're sworn in for each case to judge it by the evidence, right? Because it's different evidence for each case. So you can't just say, the Labour Party want to do this, I want to do that. And I don't even think local government can do it, because local government have got these ideas and things they want to put through the council, but any decision or vote in the council has got to be on the people. Now, there was one council down south that did an airport, and the council opposed the airport and the government punished them. And the government were very angry that the council had blocked or opposed this airport expansion. And they apparently punished them or tried to take, or they were meant to have taken powers away from them or something or other. But that vote in the council, if the electors, that's what the electors want, they have to go with what the electors want. So the government can't do that. The government can't punish the council for voting on what the electors want, because that's the whole point, regardless of what things the government are trying to do, right? Any professor in law who is not biased and prejudiced, any professor in law in this country, in any field of university subject, has to agree that this is fact. This is a pure fact of logic and intelligence. Unless you lie or prejudice the fact, no professor in England with a degree in any subject could argue with this. It's impossible based on the current the framework of what it is. Well, it isn't by policy now. And what actually is happening is that there's like an illusion, a lie, a kind of like, it's like fancy dress, or they've dressed it all up to look like there is the political parties. But what it is, it's all just trying to get other people to go along with other people's ideas, right? And what it comes down to is, for every separate decision or every separate application, there is a right to object, right? And there's a right to enter an objection against it. And that is the same as, like, you know, turning up to court and respondent in a civil case, like in the court of civil request, respondent, right? Or even criminal, whatever you want, right? Now, the thing is, if people don't have an opinion, if every single person in a village or area does have a strong opinion, and there's 3,000 people, right, then they're always going to enter opinion. If there's a planning application and 3,000 people respond to it every time, right, then, you know, you got like a full turnout. Now, the thing with the major political parties is that, you know, half of the people don't turn up to vote because they don't really like them, or they might even not care or interested. If you don't care and you don't have an opinion, then you're not casting your vote, right? You're not casting your opinion. And you're just leaving it like down to whoever does have an opinion. So out of the people who do have an opinion, then those count. Now, if someone comes in with a civil request on the table, making a case, right, and the councillors are effectively the jurats there and say, oh, see what people think about it, right? The thing is, you can have no one turning up. It's a bit strange in the council, because what happens if no one writes in, or no one responds, or no one makes an opinion, right? Now, what happens if none of the public have an opinion at all, right, on the matter? Well, that would kind of be sort of like, well, you can have a crime, right, where, I suppose you can have a crime where there's no victim, you know, like a victimless crime. You can have victimless crimes, can't you? You can have, like, you know, parking. So like, you know, well, parking's not criminal, but it's still like, you know, you can end up in court if you don't pay the fine. You can end up in court, can't you? That's like a victimless effect. Well, you know, or I guess speeding. We'll use speeding because, you know, speeding is victimless, isn't it? You don't have a victim because you can be speeding down the road and there's absolutely no one there. It's like, you know, it could be deserted, but you broke a law, but there wasn't necessarily a victim, right? So for speeding, right, there's no actual victim. There's just you who committed an offence. So if you turn up in court, you're just trying to prove, you know, why you should or shouldn't be charged. You don't actually have a victim who's been harmed, and you don't actually have anyone turning up there who is giving evidence against you, because it would just be like, you know, the police. Well, I suppose you got the police officer, but he's saying, "Oh, you broke the law," right? Because I suppose, like, the law is to protect everyone, right? The speeding thing's a really good example, because, like, no one might have been a particular victim or whatever, but the police are going out looking for people who are doing this or that, right? Now, the thing is that for the speeding thing, they're saying, oh, you're offending the public, you know, you're offending everyone, even though there was no victim. It's against the law, so, you know, apparently they offend everyone. But what about planning? So if someone wants to build something, the people of the village might be offended by that. It might offend them, right? Or they might like it. They might want a new cinema or a new McDonald's. But how do you know that? And at the end of the day, right, when they vote for these councillors, stroke jurats, they can't have their own opinion, only the public's, right? Now, what is the public's opinion? Well, regardless of if the majority of the public voted for a councillor who was kind of like, they're really into or keen on building McDonald's, or they're really keen on not building McDonald's, keeping forests, right? Still, every case has to be judged on the evidence, right? Now, if someone walks in, there aren't any McDonald's there until someone puts planning down for it. And if no one's got money, no one can afford to put planning down. You could have the government saying, "Oh, this is great, we'd love to encourage people to have more McDonald's and policies, and we'll make the laws to make it easier." But so what? That's the law, whether it's easier or harder, and whether or not they've made money out of you or not. If, no one has got enough money to make a McDonald's, there's going to be no case there. And until they put a case for that McDonald's on there to justify that McDonald's being built, then no councillors can make a decision on it, because that McDonald's has to be judged on the evidence at that site, at that location, what it affects and who it affects for each individual case, right? So, and every single case, they ask you if you can enter an objection, right? You can enter an objection. So it's a civil matter between the applicant and the local people, right? So what about the councillors? Well, the councillors are going to judge it and vote on it, right? But you appear, basically what the public are doing is they're giving evidence. They're giving evidence, but they can give evidence for or against, in support or opposition. So you could be on the side, if you're in support of a McDonald's, you're actually giving evidence to support the applicant, the person who's entered the civil request, right? And if you're opposed to it, you give evidence in opposition. Now, the thing with this evidence, right, is that the council are wanting you to make points based on what the law and regulation and rules are, who it's affecting, how it might affect people, and argue like a case, like a barrister would, right? But the decision of the councillors, right, is meant to be, it can disregard law, and it can go on opinion, right? But only judged on the evidence, but can disregard law. Now, the thing when the public are invited to stand and oppose, make an opposition, that is just on the merit of, like, a strength of a case, right? Like the applicant is putting the strength of the case, the evidence. You are doing it by strength of case, right? Now, if you get 4 or 5 people objecting, you've got a few strong. It's giving witness evidence, right? But now there's something different. What happens? There's something separate. What happens in the council decision, and that is that they've got this time that has to be allocated for petitions, right? It's a separate slot in the proceedings, right? And this is different to court. And this is where this is not like an objection that they hear this objection or that objection, right? This is for petitions. So they have to hear any petitions. Now, that is the key to the slot, really, because the petition is when you actually get in the vote from the public, and the petition is not based on a planning objection. It's not like witness evidence to make a argument for or against. It's numbers of people, the petition. So that is like, it's for and against. There might not be a petition, but if there is, right, as soon that petition is going to be representative of the councillor of the area, right? that petition is going to be representative of the member of the council of that particular area, right? Now, the thing is that is the people who elected that councillor. So if you take possession of that councillor through the petition, through numbers, right, or you know, then you're taking you're getting hold of the opinion. The people are taking possession of that councillor. Now the thing is, how do you know how many people are for or against it? You know, well, people who are really against it have probably likely already put an objection in. But the thing is, they've got this number, right, this 5%. If you get 5% of the electorate, then you're entitled to a referendum. Now, if one person turns up and makes a very, very strong case against the council, you know, the council can still effectively really, even though the evidence is presented, they've got to judge it on that evidence, but they can disregard the law. So that really, both the applicant and the people who are putting an objection in really kind of can be disregarded, but I don't think the opinion can be for a political party. The illusion is that a councillor can vote for what a political party would really like them to do, a political party agenda, a political party set of policies. You can't actually vote on a political party because the jurats are representing the persons, and even if the majority of those persons voted for a political party, it has to be, each case is separate. They can't have like a pre-opinion of a political party for each case, because otherwise the local people themselves, the electors who voted that councillor in, who can petition for every separate planning thing, can't have an opinion on each separate matter until it gets set out and proposed, because otherwise you haven't seen the evidence or facts, you know. So, and even when you vote the councillor in stroke jurat, they're sworn in to decide on, take into account the evidence of each matter. And until you've heard it, you can't have a decision. So you can't have this like political party, you can't have this political party general preference, because they haven't seen evidence for each individual matter, civil request that gets put in front of the council, right? So you can't say, oh, we're going to vote in favour of everything, because you haven't seen it yet. You ain't seen the matter. It's like, you can't say, oh, every time we go into court and there's someone speeding, we're going to find them guilty, right? Or every time, you know, someone's going to build a McDonald's, we're going to approve it. Because even if the local public have elected a councillor, the oath is to judge each matter based on the evidence, you know, and according to law. So, or some oaths differ. That's when we're going to have to get into oaths. Well, we'll get into the oaths separately. We can look at that. But it just is... So... Now, the thing is, in the Local Government Act, it says that you've got a right to petition, right? And the rules in the Local Government Act are that really, there's this kind of like really, it's just kind of like an overriding rule that you've got the right to petition for any rules that you want. When you lay a bill into Parliament, you're proposing new law and new regulation, what the law is going to be, or to change the law. That's the basis of how the Local Government Act set up for petitions and for referendums, right? when you petition for a referendum, they've got their own little kind of like basic model for a referendum, right? They've got a simple basic model for a referendum that they set in law, but they say that you could petition for your own referendum and how you want a referendum run, which is like, with your own legislation, you're petitioning for your own laws, right? So you could say, it's they set it at 5%. You could say, well, we want a referendum based on like 1%. Like, I've got 3 people. I want a referendum based on my opinion. You could petition for a local referendum just because you want one. If you want, say, I want a local referendum now based on me. Now the councillors can approve that because they've got the right to disregard the legislation and law. Now, that's where you've got not only the law for all the environmental stuff and the chemicals and things like that for the application and planning, you've got the law of the local referendum, the Local Government Act that you can disregard, which is how you can have an opinion and say, oh, okay, then, we'll have a referendum, just based on one person's opinion or whatever. But the referendum will still be asking everyone. It's just that, I'll say, I want you to ask everyone because I want you to ask everyone or whatever, But they've got this number 5%, and that is like what it is. It's a basic kind of like, it's just like a generic model for, okay, like we'll set out the, standard basic model for getting a referendum. Right, you can use that one, which is just your 5%. Now, in local wards, it's not that hard to achieve because you only, in most towns or villages for a certain ward, you usually need something like only 800 signatures, which it isn't that many to get, 800. So when people talking into all this judicial reviews and getting expensive lawyers to go in front of the council and put you could get a lawyer to put an objection in, an environmental objection, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. does, and you could pay a lot of money for it. But then there's all those judicial reviews, but that's challenging council procedure and stuff like that. Really, if you to go near any money at all or use any money where you were going to even touch a lawyer, it's pointless if you're acting on Magna Carta and in the opinion of the electorate. Because why would you try and put legal technical arguments down when the councillors really secretly can disregard the law, but they're in their mind, they're kind of like unlawfully and secretly going along with this political party control, what the political parties want them to do, or government. And that's actually illegal, I figured out. It logically is a criminal offence. It's a corrupt and illegal practice because they are under duty of answering to only the opinion of those whom elected them. And no one from no political party headquarters or agent or volunteers all around England or wherever the political party headquarters is elected them. The local people did, right? And like I said, it's impossible to prejudge a case before the evidence, facts have been laid in the council on the table. So you can't have a predisposed position. So I think it's a complete waste of money to judge it. I wouldn't send a lawyer in because at the end of the day, the lawyer can have only as strong case or stronger case than the applicant, right? Like, or the Crown Prosecutor or the defence lawyer equivalent to, but really you want to get the opinion of the peers because that's where the judgment comes in from the councillor, right? And that can be just on pure opinion, like in the Ian Bray case, right? So you want to get hold of the councillor with the petition, and that's when you want to go around and get your 5% because you probably could argue on less than 5%, but it's not a difficult number to achieve to go and get 100 signatures. I mean, you could walk around, you could do it in one day. If people in villages really, really wanted to, like, stop, for example, they're removing some trees at this university place, and there's a lot of people want to stop that, right? All you need to do is get some paper and go out. If you could get 2 or 3 people to go out and do a bit of walking, or even print them flyers or whatever, so they just need signing, you just go around. I mean, they can do it in the groups now. It's quite easy. And another thing that you can do is, they're saying that it can't, people don't have to be from the area or sign it, you know. It can. This is the problem of getting hold of the local councillors. Actually, if you are saying that the political parties or the can have an opinion, then it's like saying that people not from the village can sign a petition. People who aren't from the village. I know that there's a councillor. The lady collected 2,000 signatures, and the councillor said, "Oh no, half these people aren't from the village, so I can't accept it." Right? But really, people can sign petitions who have got an interest in it, an interest in it, because someone can buy a house and put planning permission in if they've got an interest in buying land, but they might not be from the area. It's like saying, you know, who's else coming to our area and wanting to build a house when they don't even live here or from here? What interest have they got in our area? Why do they want to build a McDonald's here, right? Or for business and making money out of us all, right? I hope you're kind of following this. It's really, really clear to me. It's just a matter of communicating it to you. Now, the thing is that the thing with the referendum is this. You can't have a referendum out of the area, because the basis of it is you ask each and every person in the area, like in the election, and they will cast their opinion, and whoever wants to turn out and whoever doesn't turn out and who votes for or against, it doesn't matter, because that process is asking all of the people, and the verdict is how the council will have to vote. That councillor, right? That jurat, right? And the thing is that in the original traditional model of the jury, if one person is against, then that's it. You know, if you remember the jury, if one person's against it, then that's it. So by getting that councillor, right, out of all the other councillors, and making them vote against it, surely they can't do it. But in courts now, they've got this thing where the judge can, like, if he's not happy with the verdict of the jury, he can do it again and then have it on like a majority or percentage, or, you know, like a 2/3 or whatever. So then you'll have to go around and get more councillors, buy more petitions or whatever. But the thing is, really, in the council, really, right, if they're going to redevelop the entire town centre, it's usually a matter of it's something for the whole county, you know, something that is a matter of the whole area, like a football stadium or something like that. Those are matters where, you know, it's the whole assembly. But for like a local planning thing, you know, like building one house or getting a conservatory extension, it doesn't, getting like a conservatory extension or something doesn't really affect the rest of the entire county. It's only that ward, right? Unless someone's really got another opinion about it. But why would the other councillors really have too much of an opinion about it? It really only matters the people in that local area or village, right? So if that one councillor, if you get the petition for them to, you know, the petition says, no, we're against this, then that one councillor has to vote against it. Then how can, or actually sometimes you've got 3 councillors per ward. Sometimes you've got 3 councillors per ward. We've got 3 councillors in our ward, but it's still 5% of those people you'll be grabbing all of the councillors, because if you get all of the people to vote against something, you're commanding 3 councillors with one electoral area. Then you got so you've got all the 3 councillors, you've got like all the 3 jurats. So if those 3 vote an opposition, I don't see how you can get it put through in one ward, unless one and all of the other councillors, but why would they all want, why would all the councillors from a whole county have an opinion in someone's conservatory getting extended in one ward? It would be slightly odd, wouldn't it? Now, another thing we've got to realise into this as well is this kind of like out of the area thing. So in the referendum, which is the same as an election, right? Every single person in that area is counted only. But the petition is to get the election, to have it, or to have the referendum, to trigger it, to put it to the people. Now, that is when you get this. You've got to prove that there's enough interest in it to justify it. Now, that is when you get your equal to 5%, of that. But I don't think it has to be 5% equal to. It actually has to be from those people, because that will only trigger all of them voting. So you're going to ask all of them anyway, right? But the thing is, if someone comes in from Cornwall, right, with a McDonald's, what the hell's it got to do with any of those people, right? He wants to tip for himself and to make money. He says that he's bringing something good there, right? But he's from out of the area. So if a lot of people petition, right, and get equal to 5% of that electorate, but they're not from there, but that's enough to say that, well, we want all those people to actually have a vote on this, not just their councillor or their jurat opinion. So that is like, instead of putting money on the table when you're not even from the area, you're putting equal. There's enough people, at least around the country, who are interested, who've got an interest in it or protecting something, to call for the council to put it to a vote to the local people. And that only costs £806 per ward. There's a maximum spend cap of £806 per ward. And that is not a lot, really, when you think of, like, most times you get a lawyer now, it's going to cost you 500 quid or 1,000, and it's only going to be judged on strength of the case or point of law, not on the people. So even if you could pay I'm starting to think now, why not just pay for the referendum? Chuck 800 quid at the council and say, well, a referendum, we'll pay for it. But really, it's meant to be paid for by the people, because if you produce this petition that's got the 5%, you're justifying the council. You're proving evidence that enough British citizens are concerned about it to have a referendum. It's only like, someone with enough money, pound notes on the table, and McDonald's is proving that he's got enough money to afford to put a case to the council. Well, you're putting a case to the council if you get 2,000 signatures. Put it this way, that Taylor guy, there's a guy called Taylor, I forgot his first name, John Taylor, that's it. He's been in and out of the council all over the place, but that woman who put the petition down to him and said that, here's my petition, that really should have triggered a local referendum, and then the actual people would have definitely had a say over all three of the councillors, and it would have only cost £806, right? Now, John Taylor, he can't say to that woman, these people in this petition aren't from the area, so it's invalid, because really that is like, saying, the Labour Party headquarters or the Conservative Party headquarters have got, like, a party leader and, agents and members and so forth, and all the members of the Labour Party from all around the country who support Labour. It's Labour control. Or they're compelling, John Taylor to vote this way or that way in the council, but he's selfless. He can't have their votes on party basis. So the petition from outside the county, he's invalidating it and saying that these people aren't from the area. Well, none of the political opinions of his party are from the area, and they can't have an opinion until the evidence has been laid on the table. Also, the facts for each individual case. Now, if John Taylor, if his Conservative Party leader, right, and the political party headquarters want to go and get, a petition from Conservatives and put it on the table and say, all right, the Conservatives have got 2,000 people. So John Taylor effectively is saying to that lady who is in our Save the Trees group, he's saying, no, sod your 2,000 signature petition, they're not from the area. Well, sod your 2,000 people of the Conservative Party who are pro-building, because they're not from the area either. And if they were from the area, we hadn't heard what they say yet, because the facts have only just been put on the table on the council, to judge on the merits of each case. So, really, and even if his party leader did take control of John Taylor, which he can't because he's selfless, but let's say that he petitioned John Taylor, all that his petition could do, I think that he can put a case in front of the council, he can put an objection in support or defence, but you can have the petition. Now, the petition, once you clock the legal argument for or against is on merit of the facts, right? Like the defence or prosecution or the plaintiff or the respondent, right? But the petition's separate. I think you could have like the Conservative Party leader could come into the council and say, oh, I support this. I don't know. But whether they could or not, can Rishi Sunak go into the council and say, here's John Taylor, I'm his party leader, I've got a building business and I've got shares in McDonald's and I support it, and he's a strong case with my lawyer. But, right, what happens if Ed Davey, MP, and all the Liberal Democrats sign a petition into that council, but they get equal or more than 5% of the electorate, but they're not from the electorate, but they've proved that so many people are bothered equal to the electorate. That has got to trigger a petition of the electorate. Now, if those electorates are Lib Dems and Ed Davies say, maybe we should. Well, I don't know whether you can't affect the outcome of an election or a referendum. You're not allowed to. If you're a serving MP or a serving councillor, you're not allowed to affect the outcome of an election. So Rishi Sunak wouldn't be able to affect the outcome of a referendum because he's Prime Minister. He won't be able to do that, actually. I don't know whether he could. He might be able to turn up as a business person and put a legitimate case on. And I think he might be able to petition for a referendum, but once you get it, I don't think that he can affect the electors either way in it. It's down to them. So you're calling the ballot for each thing, and that's what we're not doing at the moment, and that's what you've got the right to do, and that's what the council, and that's what people don't realise they can do. And what the council have got them to do is do this objection process where you put an objection in, which is based on points of law, and then the councillors are meant to be able to kind of look at it. Now, I don't know how they're making a decision in the council if they're selfless, though. If you've got all the councillors sat in the council and they're selfless, and they still got to have an opinion based on their conscience, which is meant to be a selfless conscience, and it's only meant to be based on the facts for that particular matter, they're actually basing it on the facts at that point. They can't actually base it on a political party control or any political party out of the county. They can't, because it's on the facts. So the conscience is meant to be an opinion that would be representative of the local people if it hasn't been specifically asked for and gone to on this occasion, which you can call for. What would the local people say? But regardless of whether that councillor was elected by Tories or Labour, he can't have an opinion of a Labour or Tory or Green Party policies because he's meant to base the judgment on the facts and evidence presented of the applicant and the case and the merits of the case, not on a political party opinion. But they can, like the jury, disregard law and decide on their opinion, but their own opinion selflessly, purely based on the strength and facts of the case presented and the merits of the case. But what's happening is that their conscience, really in their minds, all the Labour Party are voting Labour and all the party are voting Conservative, and that's kind of illegal, really, in a way, because they're not judging it on the merits of the case or what their electorate might actually have an opinion on each case, which must be reset. It has to be reset for each case, because none of the people in the town or village have seen any of the applications. So effectively, you can't vote on a Green Party opinion on every case because you can't have an opinion. And every single citizen and elector for which the councillor would be supposedly voting on behalf of cannot be predisposed for each opinion until it's been laid on the table. It's impossible. It can't be possible. It effectively would be like a jury. Can you imagine if the Labour Party or Conservatives started having juries based on what the Labour Party wanted to do? The best way to imagine it is if you put the council chamber back into the courts of civil requests and then have the judge there in the jury. And can you imagine if, now, if you, let's say the jury, right? Let's say the jury from the town are all permanent, like they were. And let's say that, let's say there's 12 jurors, and let's say that there's 4 Conservatives. Let's say that there's 6 Tories, and let's say that there's 2 Green Party members in that jury, right? They happen to be members of that party. You've got the right to join a political party. Now, what would you think if those 12 jurors, of being of those different political party affiliations and mix, right? You go to a court, and every time there's a dispute between Party A and Party B in Court of Civil Requests, what happens if every single time the outcome was coming like the Tory voters won every time? Would you think that was a lawful due process? Or Extinction Rebellion? What happens if, Burning Pink Party from Extinction Rebellion, Roger Hallam, had 10 people on a jury, right? Now, the thing is with the jury, you've only got to get one person supposedly to oppose it. But then they started having it that the chairman can override that and then go on a 2/3 vote or whatever. But wouldn't you think that it was odd if the same verdicts kept coming out from the same party members? Now, the thing is, they've got to know, like I said earlier, this is the important part to do with the oaths, right? In that situation, I'm just proposing now, they can disregard the law. Let's look at these new ridiculous Scottish laws for freedom of speech, right? And they've got these new hate speech laws. Now, if it was criminal and not civil, right, the evidence of the case is not law. The evidence in case is the facts and circumstances of the case that are presented, right? The jury can disregard the law like in Ian Bray, but they've got to judge it on the case in front of them, right? But they can do it on their conscience. But if that conscience was secretly a political party headquarters telling them how to vote, then you would think that was injustice, wouldn't you? You would this is injustice. You couldn't have the political parties telling the jurors how to vote, and secretly they're voting how the political parties want them to vote in their mind, but saying it's their conscience, because it has to be completely different based on every case that's put there, on the evidence of the case. But they can disregard the law. which basically means a lot of the law that's coming out now of, a lot of the legislation for this, Priti Patel and, Sola Braverman and, well, Johnson as well, all this work stuff like, what do you call it? The Public Order Act 2023. A lot of it's nonsensical, and it's defective in logic and to current law. But you can disregard that act and go on the merits of the case, and they can judge it by their conscience. So, and same with this new hate speech law, right? So, it's kind of ridiculous. Now, the thing is that we've got this additional thing that you can do in the council, which is different to when the Court of Civil Request was in the court. Actually, I still think you had the right to petition then, I still think you got the right to petition. But anyway, you might be able to lay a petition in front of a court, I'm starting to think that now. You might be able to. But anyway, so the hearing of petitions in the council is separate to objections and lawyers putting objections in for or against. It's separate because you're actually, you can have a local referendum on any matter that the council's got to decide on. And it's actually so easy. The thing is that we've got Facebook groups now, and a lot of people are panicking in these Facebook groups, like in Save Manchester Greenbelt. In Save Manchester Greenbelt and all these other groups, they're panicking and they're going through all this law and legislation, and we'll put an objection in and we'll get a lawyer and we'll put in money. And it's a lot of wasted money to lawyers because they only need to really get, it's very easy online to get 800 signatures. And then they've got to have a local referendum, and it's justified the council paying the £800. Now, a lot of these councils now are going bankrupt at the moment and saying they haven't got any money. But that's not our fault, that's their fault. We've still got a legal right. And all these lawyers and all these fancy people have been making fortunes out of people, for all these legal cases. Really, I think that you can just walk into the council with 800 quid, £806 or whatever it is, or £906 or whatever it is, something around 800 or 900 quid, and you can put that on the table in the council and say, right, we're having a referendum. Why not? If the applicant has got £100,000 or £500,000 to build a McDonald's, how is he walking into the council and putting on the table and saying, right, I'll have a McDonald's? Because if he didn't have the money, it wouldn't matter how strong the legal case. He could go into the council and say, right, we're going to get planning approved for a McDonald's. But he might not have any money to build a McDonald's, right? So you can go in the council and get planning passed to build houses, right? But no one might have any money to build them. So they're never going to build them if no one's got the money for it, right? This is what they're doing with land. They're getting all this land and saying, right, we've got this land here, the council own it, but the council are going to sell it off. And they were going to try allocate this land for permission to build. So they've already kind of got the permission or whatever. But that's only like an allocation. You can't say that someone actually goes and builds an house, then no one can object to it, because that's ridiculous. I actually believe now with that £806, you're only petitioning, right? You're only petitioning to justify the council paid 800 quid for a local referendum. You're proving that there's enough people concerned locally to allocate £806 or £906 to a local referendum in a ward, so we can actually see once and for all whether the people want it. And those three councillors in our area, all three of them have to then abide by that. All three councillors. Because there's three councillors for one ward. And if that ward votes one way, then all three councillors have to go for it. I've only just remembered this now. You've got three whole councillors. Actually, ironically, I mentioned Harry Potter earlier and, J.K. Rowling, right? Because that's almost like the Deathly Hallows, isn't it? Like the three things of the Deathly Hallows, like, so it's like the invisibility, like they got the cloak of invisibility and the three other things that constitute the Deathly Hallows. So that's what the political parties have got, this like cloak of invisibility. You can't see that it's an illusion. And what they're doing, it's actually a corrupt and illegal practice. Because what they're doing is, they're actually, what the councils and the television are doing, the television are saying that there is this thing that exists called control of the council. Oh, so many Labour people got elected over Tories, so Labour have control. Actually, who says that thing exists? The television. It's like a slogan, Nike or whatever. It's a slogan they've conjured up. It's not. We know what legal basis is it? Oh, because we've got more councillors. But wherever in the law or in policy, and a lot of its guidance, not even legislated or standing orders, a lot of this material the council come out with, like the newspaper come out with Tosh, the news are using this term control of the council or whatever. It actually doesn't have a legal basis underneath it. It can't have a legal basis under it, and there is no legal basis. It's a saying. It's actually a term that doesn't have a legal basis behind it. I'm not too sure where they conjured it up or they've called it control of the council, but whatever it is, the only person who has control of a council are the electors, right? The electors have control over the council at all times and have control over the councillors. Now, you can have someone who comes in for planning permission, right? And they've put a case on the table, they're making a case to the council, they're not even from the area, they don't live in the area, and they don't have control over anything. They've got £500,000 and a lawyer, and they go into the council saying, we want the right to build a McDonald's, right? They got control of nothing except money, right? And then the people can object to it. And if they haven't got any money, then they have to make their own objection up, or they can get a lawyer, right? But no political party headquarters in this country has control of the council or a councillor at that point, because when you put the facts on the table, right, he has to be judged on the case presented each time. Now, if the Durats are secretly in cahoots with or support the applicant, like the McDonald's owner or the McDonald's executive or whatever it is, right? All I can say is that position is the same position as if you got a jury who turned up, selected at random, and they all liked Ian Bray or supported Extinction Rebellion, then they're going to vote towards Ian Bray or Extinction Rebellion, right? And that's really why you're not allowed to have those cases in the courts, because Extinction Rebellion have already got a petition to Parliament, and Extinction Rebellion have already got a legal case to Parliament for those political causes, and it's meant to be decided on air by Parliament, and they've got the petition signatures, not the local courts. And that is why they made it illegal for those matters to be heard locally. Now, what happened in the Tumultuous Petitioning Act is that if it's under 20 signatures, you've got the right to petition Parliament, and it doesn't go through the local courts. If it's over a certain number of people, they have to get consent, but they're not judging the case. Let's have no illusions. If you had to get a jury or councillors to give consent for McDonald's to petition HM government to build a McDonald's, that court will be not judging, or those councillors or those jurats will not be judging whether a McDonald's got bill or did not get bill or approved. They're only deciding through the Tumultuous Act to give consent for everyone opposed to take the matter to Parliament, to the House of Commons, right? And usually it would be because you got over 20 signatures. Now, we've got a right, currently, I found out that you've got the right to seek a resolution from either Houses of Parliament. And that's in the Magistrates Court Act 2003 and in the Justices of the Peace Act, which is repealed. It's the same thing. It's a right to seek a resolution from either Houses of Parliament. And that actually can be from any court in England, any local or regional court, or even a local council, because they were doing courts of civil request. And that's what I've currently done. I've currently done that with Kirklees East Council over that town centre redevelopment. I actually brought a civil case against them as well for damages for that decision. But then I realised that, just a minute, it says here that you can seek a resolution from Parliament. I can seek a resolution from Parliament for that county court case, but then again, the county court case is the same matter that I'm disputing over the council planning. So the whole thing, both cases, is one matter. And I've got a right to seek resolution from Commons. Now, in the Tumultuous Petitioning Act, you would have to get consent, but only if you get 20 signatures, and it would be by the grand jury, or 3 justices, 3 councillors would have to approve it. Sorry, 3 justices. But the justices' opinion really would have to be in front of the court, which would be the jury. Now, you've got 3 jurats here in the local ward. If you get a petition, you get control of 3 jurats. So how can you not have control of the 3 jurats to approve it through the chairman? Oh, well, you don't have 3 justices in the council. It's only 1 chairman. So there's only 1 chairman in the council. There ain't 3 justices. I'll tell you that. So if you get 3 councillors, then surely that you get the opinion to appeal it to the House of Commons. But you don't need... They repealed the Tumultuous Petitioning Act. You don't need consent of the local council or courts to petition Parliament. You don't need consent. You've got the right to do it. You've got to collect the signatures to get it debated in Parliament. It can be debated on 1 signature or referred to a committee on any signatures, actually. The truth of the matter in Parliament is that you don't need any numbers of signatures, right? I've got this case open with the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office now. I won't go into the details of what I've written there, but this is general information for everyone in all matters. This is not case specific to my case. This is like, all I'm doing now is I'm telling you, right, there's a load of laws in place now. I'm not telling you old law which doesn't apply. I'm telling you old law which is in use, in effect, Magna Carta. Old law which is being used now in law, in legal effect, and new acts like the Local Government Act 2000, which is in use, and the council procedures, which I know what the council procedures are. And you can hear petitions, but you can also, you don't need consent of the council, right, to petition Parliament. You don't need it since the Tumultuous. And I submitted a petition to the council as well through their own petition procedure to petition House of Commons, but also one to the House of Commons. Same thing. And I had a hunch that they were going to try and not publish it, right? Immediately when it's published, that council order is subject to an annulment because pending a resolution from the House of Commons. Now, with the Stop ULEZ, I think they put a bill to the House and then it got voted against by Labour. But that's in Parliament. But you can still collect more signatures and try to get a referendum. Stop ULEZ have got like about 400,000 signatures, right? I complained to Parliament that there's 2 petitions on change.org and then one guy got one listed on House of Parliament Live, and I complained. I said they'd been blackmailed by the mayor election because they won't act on those petitions unless they get a mayor elected. So they actually ended up trying to put a bill through, but Labour voted against it. Fair enough. But that I complained for that through petition, and there was over 400,000 signatures. We can have that with our local redevelopment of the town centre. That's the position that I'm in now. But I'm arguing over them publishing it on... well, I've already submitted... You don't need any number of signatures to... there's no number of signatures you need to pursue a petition from Parliament. You're allowed to. So as soon as one person, me, submit that petition to Kirklees Council, which I submitted saying that I want a resolution from the House of Commons, I can have one because you're not asking that council to approve it. You don't need consent from the council. So I don't need any consent from that council from number of signatures to petition Parliament. I submitted it. I said, right, I want a resolution from Parliament, right? Now, so... immediately, that cannot be objected to by the council because they don't have a right to I don't need consent from that local authority to petition Parliament or any court. None since the Tumultuous Petitioning Act. So it's about getting this House of Commons petition published under that the council planning application number on Parliament's website. And I knew they were going to probably try and reject it, and I wanted it approved. And I said to them, don't reject that petition, because I've complained to the Judicial Conduct Office now, because you're breaking the law. It's corrupt and legal practice to reject it. So I'm complaining to JCOI, because the Petitions Committee is like a court. It's got power of summons and subpoena and so forth. And you can complain to the Commons through the Constitutional Reform Act 2005, Section 5. Lord Chief Justice has got jurisdiction. This is this is not case specific to my case. This is like what Black Belt Barrister does, really. This is like general explanation of the system and what we should be doing. This is not case specific to any of my cases. This is like all in any case, So that's where I am at the moment with that thing. So I think that what the political parties are doing is illegal. What they're doing is they're creating an illusion of this control of parties when it can't exist, because every new case that is to be decided can't be prejudged or pre-policied. All their policies really do is what really the election is, the way they've got it set up, is that they want you to vote for a person because you like that person and you want that person to represent you in the council. Now, usually in real life, in the villages, they used to go blow the horn and get everyone to come to the centre of the village and then vote for the Jurats and the mayor and so forth. And you vote for who your personal preference is. There was no candidates. The mayor usually chose 3 people who was going to, and then you could vote from those 3 for who was going to be the next mayor, right? The mayor got to select the array of people, but you could still then vote for which one you preferred, right? But they didn't always have that procedure, different charters for different towns and cities around England. They had different rules and different bylaws. The villagers got they nominated the Jurats. You didn't have these political parties saying, oh, these are the people we're putting forward, you can choose, because then you're limited. You're limited to people who are going to be prejudiced to certain parties and certain things when they can't be prejudiced because it's illegal. Because once they get voted in, they're completely wiped. They're completely duped. They're slate wiped and scanned. Their conscience is wiped from political parties, and they have to serve the electors, who have got the right to their own opinion in everything. And you can't have a conscience. Well, you can't have an opinion on a case until you see the facts. The oath of the Jurats and the councillors really effectively is meant to be like, we will judge every case before the council according to the evidence. So you can't have the evidence. What's happening is the conscience of every councillor is being possessed by a political party, right? And they're thinking that they've kind of got the right to that because they've got the right to their own conscience. But the conscience in law is meant to be to the people who elected them, right? I think George Galloway said, I swear allegiance to King Charles and will serve, according to law. I don't think George Galloway swore an allegiance to his electors, but they elected him. And apparently no one can email him in Parliament, or he can't speak to anyone unless it's their electors. So I don't know how someone from building a McDonald's in Truro can email George Galloway. I've been emailing him, but I don't ask for a reply. I'm allowed to lay facts to him, on things that are concerning. I don't know how George Galloway can swear allegiance to someone from McDonald's in Truro when he's been elected by his electors. Maybe he's got a different oath. I don't know. But Parliament is not a local area. Actually, we need to get I'll have to get the oath of the... I'm going to get the oath of the councillors and find out what it is, if there is one. And I'll put that for the thumbnail to this video. I'll put that on the thumbnail and in the comments, because I haven't actually looked at it yet, and we'll find out. I can't see how they've got a conscience to a political party that isn't in the area. If their conscience has been taken possession of, it's been taken possession illegally. And it's almost, it will be the equivalent in law of Richard Tice or Nigel Farage or Rishi Sunak or Starmer taking possession of the conscience of an array of a jury in a civil dispute or a civil matter or a criminal thing, secretly having control of those jurats, and that would be unlawful. Only the electors have their conscience. Their conscience is with their electors, and not anyone out of that electorate. Certainly not the person who's putting planning application in from out of the town. So, there's a lot in this. Funnily, when I started recording this video earlier, which is over 1 hour 40 minutes ago, I actually had prepared some slides here to talk about law and talk about that Scottish government putting through these new hate speech laws, which can be ignored in court on the conscience of the jury. So I won't panic about it too much, but they've scrapped juries in magistrates' courts and they've scrapped juries in civil matters. But as long as you can demand, I think you can demand a Crown Court hearing. As long as you demanded a Crown Court hearing on that, you could probably get one. But a lot of those crimes are more serious ones, I think. What I got ready is a lot of dictionary. I got a lot of dictionary excerpts over starting with what does grievance mean, and then going into the word hate and examining it and other words. I think the new hate speech law is written on hate crimes, and it has to come under the definition of hate. But other words have other definitions. The definition of dislike is not hate. If you go into a court and you dislike something, it can't be a hate crime because it didn't have hate, it had dislike. But there are other things that are worse than hate that also don't mean hate. They mean something completely different, like abhorrence, aberrance, and other things. And actually, when it comes down to it, I've actually read, and this is what I wanted to go through in this video, all these slides. I'm going to have to make a separate video about it now. And what I've found out is that behind the word hate, it turns out that there's an opposition to it and a right to have an opposition or a refusal to be treated a certain way or accept a certain thing that you have a hate of or dislike or abhorrence. Now, if they made it illegal, if you could prove that they're trying to make it illegal to actually oppose something and have an opposition, you've got a case that it's illegal because they're trying to subvert the rights and liberties of the realm under the Bill of Rights. And that would be evil justices, ministers and councillors. If by making hate speech can be proven to, they've made it illegal to have an opposition to something, or express an opposition, or express a strong or passionate opposition, then they can actually be prosecuted in law under the Bill of Rights, because there are crimes. Now, you might say illegal prosecutions by the King's Bench for matters that can only be cognisable in Parliament. Well, actually, these are crimes in Parliament. These are crimes that subvert the existing rights by which Parliament and the political system operates by. And also to be able to go into a court and have cognizance in a court and make cases and give evidence, you need to be able to oppose things and have an opposition or dislike to things. So it's not just Parliament, it's cognition of a court. I think Nicola Sturgeon and the Scottish Government and the rest of them are actually, these are corrupt and illegal practices of ministers. You might not believe this is possible because of parliamentary privilege, but you can have crimes of elected ministers, like crimes of judges. Now, all through the whole law and all the charters, right, we the people have got a legal right to accuse judges and sheriffs and police and the jury of crimes and offences. So we can accuse the court of offences and crimes. They might try and make you say that, like, the CPS have got this, you've got to accuse a jurat, you've got to oppose a jurat before they're sworn in. But there's loads of offences that jurats can commit after they've been sworn in. So I don't know what the Judicial Conduct Office are talking about when they've got the sole investigation of judges, but we're allowed to complain about them. That's why it's there, so you can enter a complaint, which is like the citizens, you, me, or anyone. And these are actually crimes or offences. They're actually not immune from crimes. They actually can be prosecuted. And I knew that they can't have total immunity. They've got certain indemnities in legal cases and proceedings, depending on who's bringing the particular case and whether they're telling the truth or not. And then you've got certain things that certain people like the police are allowed to do that usually you and me can't do, like break down doors. It's enacted in law. And the basis of it is to the harm done, which is like the response to a crime, it must be justifiable enough to solve it and apprehend the person for the crime. The Archbishop of Canterbury has been talking a little bit the other day about, justices and, he wants to spread peace. Justices of the peace are supposed to encourage peace. Really, the law is meant to encourage peace, is stop people who are breaking the peace, But the police have got this legislation where they can do things that are justifiably equal to what the crime was to prevent it or solve it. And that is what, when we're petitioning government, the indemnity of petitioning Parliament, the Act of Indemnity, really the right to petition Parliament and not be answerable to the local courts is the same as the police. But on a national level to Parliament, you're policing something to Parliament, not to the local courts. It's a civil case, a civil dispute, political case with actions that are carried under that case, which are answerable to Parliament, not the local courts. Actually, if the police break your door down, right? If you've got a really good lawyer, reasonable force, as well as like them trying to prove that you are guilty of the crime or not, you can actually make a clear. A criminal matter can arise in civil proceedings. I'm sure that you can justify that your crime didn't merit your door being kicked down by the police and they could have just waited a bit longer or something. You know, like if it's a stolen loaf of bread. I know the police kind of like don't bother going after stolen bread anymore, but I think you can justify in the court that that police officer, it wasn't reasonable force to use. And I think even if they've got a warrant from the magistrate, and you might be able to get your lawyer to challenge the warrant, whether the warrant was, you know, justified breaking the door down, you know, for the bread, even if they had the warrant, maybe challenge it. There are lots of things like that. But this is where the police really aren't supposed to get into the to the affairs of, you know, Parliament, cases to Parliament. Unless you say the police aren't policing through the local courts, but the Parliament are directing the police. But if Parliament were directing the police, then all of the matters that people are petitioning to the Parliament, like Extinction Rebellion cases, the police would be arresting them under the High Court or the Petitions Committee, not really the local court's jurisdiction. And it does. There is this kind of indemnity as well. This is kind of like what I've got into through the 1688 Bill of Rights, and it's all kind of laid out that they're giving people the indemnity to petition Parliament. I think when you get the consent from the local court, in the Tumultuous Act, when it was over 20, if it was under 20 people, I think they were giving you the benefit that you weren't going to be able to cause that much trouble, or it wasn't that much a public hazard or risk for the things you needed to do for remonstrances for that cause, right, and public actions, because there wasn't really too much damage you could do or whatever. And what they did is, in the Tumultuous Act, they said, if you get over 20 people, you're going to have to get consent from either the grand jury, the public, or three justices to continue getting with the matter that you're bringing. And this is why I want to get evidence of what was happening in that Tumultuous Act proceedings. Because if the Extinction Rebellion turn up and say, yeah, we're trying to get the government to do this or that, we need to make public demonstrations to try and get people behind it, there'll be some remonstrances, we might be misbehaving a bit, we might have to kick a few doors down like the police do, but only equal to what the cause justifies, like, you know, what the police case justifies to justify, you know, equal to the harm of what stealing a loaf of bread, but this is equal to the harm of what, you know, these big companies are causing damage to people's health and the environment. If the grand jury would have said, yeah, okay, then this is equal to the harm, and it's, you know, they okayed it, then they were given consent to it from the courts. And then, you know, petitioning Parliament, then really they won't be able to be challenged, really, unless Parliament overrid it or whatever. And that would be whether they, like, heard the case or referred it to a committee or had a debate over it, like the Tess Lowry stuff. So I think that's where I am with it now. But I want to do a separate video into the words and the letters and the writing and the meanings, because for hate crimes, when you go into court, what they'll do is they'll actually judge whether they'll use the definition of hate and say whether your speech comes under the definition of hate. But if it falls under a different definition, like just dislike, it won't qualify as hate. It's like dangerous driving. Was it due care and attention, or was it dangerous driving? Depending on, you know, what they think that it was. With hate crimes, it has to come under the definition of hate, and that will come under the dictionary definition and some other definitions. And if it's found to just be dislike, then it can't be a hate crime because it's dislike. So you're definitely using meanings and interpretation. What I found this morning before I started doing this is that I've looked more into the definition of hate and grievance, bring the right to bring a grievance to the government by petition. And I found that there are some other words and terms that are worse than hate, that aren't hate, and therefore some of those do include hate, but others are separate. Now, if dislike is different to hate, and it doesn't fall under the definition of hate, there are worse words and feelings than hate. Hate actually isn't at the top of the ladder of definitions and human emotions. There are worse ones. There are some that are hate or similar. They haven't legislated against other crimes that are actually worse than hate, which is abhorrence and other ones. They've only legislated against hate. Now, if hate is separate and different to other terms as much as dislike is, they've not legislated against language that is worse than hate, only up to hate. Some of them include hate, but others are separate. Some are so separate that they're as separate as dislike is from hate. And I've also found that I've found in the dictionary that there's a very strong case that hate is actually necessary for some forms of grievance, and being able to bring a grievance and behind bringing the grievance, or actually, if you have suffered an offence, any offence, it is through the pursuit of hate of the crime by which you can pursue it. Now, they've got a definition, hate crime, but hate crime is something that they're saying is a response, but it's too much of a response. But in the dictionary, it's saying that part of grievance is the right to be able to hate, to respond. Now, I found that if that is considered to be part of a grievance, and in the Bill of Rights it says the right to bring grievances, they've actually legislated away some of the rights to bring grievance, and that's under political matter. So they haven't really actually, they haven't and can't take away as much as free speech from Parliament, as much or political petition, as much as from the grievance. So it kind of is, it's wokish nonsense. And what it really is it's about as much error and misunderstanding as it is in the error and misunderstanding of actually political parties, and what even you can have it, which you can't have hate crimes for grievances and political matters, and actually a hate crime is a bit of a joke, because it's like if you've got a spectrum, you can't make red illegal, right? And say that also blue is if you say red's illegal, right? Now, if you've got orange and yellow, the colour red is made up from other colours, right? So there's some orange in it, right? Now, with words like, the reason why dislike does not qualify to hate is like a spectrum, right? What they'll argue in a court is they'll argue that if orange is hate, right, then red, you got red, orange and yellow, right? Now, they'll judge that, okay, if your actions have got, some hate in it, orange has got some yellow in it and some red, right? So you could say that there's evidence of orange and there's evidence of red and yellow in orange, right? There's some evidence of it. So with the hate crime, if dislike is dislike, it's not hate. So if it's plain straight yellow, it's yellow. But what they're doing is they're trying to argue that, if it's got, you might dislike it, but if you're going into this, hate, it's almost like going from, into red from orange and yellow. How far have you gone into it? Or is it tainted with it, right? But there are things that are even a different colour or completely different, like purple. You can't say purple is red, right? Because it's not. So what about abhorrence? Completely, aberrant to things, right? It's not a hate crime. It's not hate. And it could be as different to hate as dislike is to hate. So they'd have to create a new term. This is what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going on now about, they're having to make up and invent terms, like terms that are not illegal but not productive to the platforms that you're on, harmful to the platforms but not against the law. They're just making things up that they don't like. That they don't like. And this is a lot of the thing with a lot of offences with are you offended? And what you find is what's happening now is if you try and define something, right, of what is offensive or not, what you'll find is what's offensive to that person. Because to another person it might not be offensive. And at that point, what I've realised now is that if we go back to the jurats and the jury and the counsellors, are they judging it on point of law or are they going on their conscience and they can disregard law as long as you go by the facts? What's happening now is that you're getting like this Irish Prime Minister and his woke crew and the Scottish government and their woke crew. And then you've got, like Sunak, Patel, Braverman, and then possibly Johnson and others who have got the woke crew. And what it actually comes down to is what you find is when you work out what these people are doing, it's just like, oh, we don't like this, or our group don't like this, or our party don't like this, right? And they're trying to get it put through government so that they're trying to legislate it and they're trying to make it that no one, if we don't like this, no one must like it, right? But it's their conscience. Their conscience can never be anyone's conscience in a courtroom, right? Because particularly when you're getting a new jury every time, it's a new set of consciences. So it's a fresh set of consciences. So no one can possibly all agree that, this or that should be illegal. And that's why you can actually disregard the law, because not all people believe in that. It's like the religion. And ironically now, the thing with the religion is this, right? Christianity was the official religion of our government, right? And everyone had to swear on the Bible in court. And the Archbishop of Canterbury is like, the primate of all England, right? Now, what they've done, because other people in this country started having other religions like Hindus, Sunak's meant to be a Hindu, or, Islam, or Muslims, right? What they've done is, because the conscience of every person in the country wasn't Christian, what they've started, which is forgiveness, we believe in forgiveness, right? What they've started to do, right, is that now they've started to change the laws, because we're getting Muslim, Hindu, and Sikh and Islam people in Parliament, ministers, and Scottish Parliament, and Irish Parliament, right? And Scientologists and woke. So what they've done is they're thinking, what they're doing now is they're thinking, we don't all believe in forgiveness. We don't all believe in the Christian faith and church. We believe in his Islam, Hindu, Muslim, right? And we don't like hate, and we don't we don't like these other things. We don't like freedom of speech. So we're going to remove the oath even from law and make it so we can have our religion in there, to have our consciences in the jury, and we're even going to change the law so it'll accept, some people in this country don't like free speech and don't like, people being allowed to freedom of hate and stuff like that, right? So, and the law's been changed, but you don't have to go by the law in court. But you go by the conscience, but the conscience can be different every time. You might get a jury full of conscience of, you might have, God help us, Nicola Sturgeon lookalikes, doppelgangers in the court, in the jury. You might have Rishi Sunak doppelgangers in the jury. You might have Suella Braverman doppelgangers in the jury. Or you might have the Archbishop of Canterbury in the jury. I don't think actually the peers can be in the jury, right? You might have a load of police officers doppelgangers in the jury. Or you might have a load of Christians, devout Christians who believe in forgiveness in the jury, and they might forgive you, right? But then they can decide it on their conscience, but it has to be they have to decide it based on the facts of the case. Why? Because they won't actually know what's happened and who it concerns and what even the case is, and they won't know what they're deciding with their conscience until it's been put on the table. So the law's meant to be a guide. So, and this is meant to be with decisions in the council. So what you end up getting is a load of, if you vote in a load of Labour councillors, you've got a doppelganger, a load of Tory doppelgangers in, or a load of Conservative doppelgangers in, when really the only true doppelgang is your electorate. Because it is a criminal offence for any serving juror or other people to vote going on the opinion of Rishi Sunak, or the opinion of Suella Braverman, or the opinion of the Irish Prime Minister, or the opinion of a Davy MP, or the opinion of Nigel Farage. Because they've got to vote with, it says, their conscience, of them, their own opinion of the matters put on the table, not the opinion of the Dark Lord that they serve. A jury has to vote on their own conscience, not on the party political control or opinion of Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer. So it's like a possession, and they banned witchcraft. They persecuted and prosecuted witchcraft all the way through, the later 1600s and so forth, because of possessions. You got to know what a possession is. A possession is that someone takes possession of your spirit. Now, the law can't take possession of your spirit, because no matter how many acts of law Nicola Sturgeon puts through in Scottish Parliament, she can lift her kilt up, she can wiggle her fireballs. You can sit in Scottish Parliament all day stamping legislation. Bang, 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 bang. You can have the entire Scottish Assembly putting legislation through all week and all day, going bang, 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 bang. But when you get in a court of law with a jury, right, and the facts and circumstances on the table of which they will be judged by the consciences of the jury, that legislation means diddly squat squat, unless you get a jury full of Nicola Sturgeon doppelgangers, or WEF doppelgangers, or Suella Braverman doppelgangers, or the Archbishop of Canterbury doppelgangers. But, I'm not too sure where the Archbishop of Canterbury is going with this, because he's trying to promote the Christian faith. But what's actually happening is that in the Lords and in Parliament, they're accepting other religions in, and Hinduism and Sikhism and Islam Scientology and, atheism is coming in, right? And taking over the ministers, taking possession of the ministers in their lawmaking. So I don't really know what the Archbishop of Canterbury is doing on his own page, trying to promote forgiveness and promoting peace of the Christian faith, when he's kind of under a national takeover of other religions, and they're changing the law to remove forgiveness in the Christian faith. Now, the whole point of the jury of their conscience was meant to be so... It actually is Christian faith, because it's built upon the Bible and the church, and the conscience is the conscience of the spirit and the soul of the person, and their opinion is they can forgive, or they can actually have an opinion. They're not possessed. They're not possessed by the law. They're not possessed by Suella Braverman's new legislation. They're not possessed, they can ignore it. They're not possessed by Nicola Sturgeon's new legislation. They're not possessed by the Irish Prime Minister or Biden's new legislation. They've got their own opinion, right? And their own soul and spirit. They're not possessed by, maybe not even the Christian faith or even the Muslim or Hindu. It's their own opinion, their own conscience. But I know for certain the councillors are meant to be elected because they're meant to be the preferred conscience of the people, the preferred conscience of the village. The village elects the juror of whose conscience they put their faith and better judgment and opinion in. But that's not happening anymore, because what these political parties are doing are they're saying, oh, we've got a little club, a little gang that's taking possession of politics, and we're putting a few candidates up, and you can't choose anyone in the village. You can't nominate or elect anyone in the village. You can only have who's on the ballot. You can only have who is on the ballot and who we have proposed that you can choose A, B or C. Now, that is what the mayor used to do. The mayor in like Kent and Maidstone, previous jurats who had been serving, or previous justice of the peace, the mayor, when he was leaving office, he could suggest three justices, and you pick out of those three. There were his nominations. But for the actual jurats, the judges, the jury, they were judged actually from the people, the citizens, and they could freely choose who they wanted, because they used to go blow the horn around and then everyone would assemble, right? So it's meant to be the people's choice. Now, it's not the people's choice if you turn up at a polling station and you've only got 3 or 4 people on the ballot. That's not the people's choice. That's the party's choice, not the people's choice. We haven't chosen them. The party's chosen them. That's as bad as the mayor selecting 3 people or 4 people. Now, do you want in the council people judging with their conscience only 3 people who the previous council mayor has chosen? Half of the people are complaining about the council at the moment. Half of the people are complaining about the council and complaining about these political parties. Half of the people don't turn up to vote. So out of those people who turn up to vote, no wonder they're not turning up to vote when the selection and array of people is only for moving forward by these political parties that they don't like or believe in. They don't have their conscience. You're meant to turn up and write down anyone you want. I could choose Russell Brand, although he's not from our area. I'm going to write down Russell Brand, for Mayor of West Yorkshire. I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to put on through Magna Carta. I have, by my conscience, on Magna Carta, the right to choose and elect my police and crime commissioner based on my conscience, right? Not on who you say I can legally vote for. Because I don't have to go by the law. I don't have to vote in that election by that Freedom of the People Act. because I don't have to have a permission. I don't have to submit a petition on the criteria of the Local Government Act 2000. I can propose my own rules by what referendum will be run by, right? I do not have to turn up in that election and vote by that Freedom of Information Act. It's a lawful due process. We're being asked on a specific date to turn up and vote for who we want to be in office, and they're going to lawfully count all the ballots, and they're going to lawfully run the procedures. It's a lawful process. I can vote on my conscience. I can go in that polling station and I can make a judgment on my conscience who I want to be the Mayor of West Yorkshire. And I am going to write down Russell Brand on that paper. And if his name does not appear on that Electoral Commission results, right, I am going to prosecute him for corrupt and illegal practices in that election. If Russell Brand's name does not appear on the results, right, of that West Yorkshire Mayor, Police and Crime Commissioner election, if one vote does not appear on there, or whatever, with your Monster Raving Looney Party or whatever, next to Russell Brand, if Russell Brand's name does not appear on that election, then I am going to prosecute the Electoral Commission, and the whole election is going to be declared void and corrupt because it's fraudulent, right? I can vote for who I want. I'm not no mayor of this country tells me who I can and cannot vote for, right? Because even in Magna Carta and even in those elections back in the 1640s and 1500s, right? Even then, you could argue in those elections that there's a case to argue that when that mayor nominated 3 people and you could choose of those 3 people who you were going to vote for mayor, that the mayor nominated, there's an argument that you didn't have to vote. You didn't have to vote for his nominations. You could ignore the law. You could ignore the legislation, just like in a civil or criminal procedure. And actually, that village could completely disregard the mayor's choice and vote for who they want. And that's where I am with it now, right? So, I wanted to... I actually probably going to send this to J.K. Rowling because, I'm not really like a fan of J.K. Rowling or anything all over. But if she's going to be a person who speaks out for free speech, and if she's going to be a person who opposes these corrupt governments and has got the financial power to challenge them in the courts, like when they take the government to court for, harming the future profits of companies, right? There's a legal case here. There is actually a legal case for corruption in the Scottish government for making that legislation. That it is against Magna Carta, and it's a corrupt and illegal practice under Magna Carta, subverting the rights and liberties of the realm. The whole model for what they're doing. That, I don't know if you can follow any of that. You'd have to draw it as I'm writing it. What you'd have to do is, if you don't understand what I'm saying, you have to draw like mathematicians draw on a blackboard or a whiteboard. They draw the mathematical equations and formula. As I've been saying all this, right, you need to draw down like the councillors and the council and the positions and what I've said for each one, and then draw lines between the relationships between it and the actual dynamics of how that works, but also in law, and then apply the law like you apply a mathematical formula on it, how they've written it in the Local Government Act, in the policies they've got for councillors serving, and then the Magna Carta clauses that are in effect now, they are in effect of law, and then the other legislation, which I'm not wrong about, right? Don't know every part, but from what I do know, I know that I'm absolutely not wrong about this. They've got a con going. They've got like a charade con scheme of this control of the council, which is tosh. And a lot of the council, I'm not saying that there aren't honest councillors. There are some independent councillors, there are some honest councillors, and there are some good councillors. I really need this to be on that Colchester Council Watch, and I need everyone to understand it and listen to it as well. There's a guy running for Police and Crime Commissioner, I think, in Gloucestershire. He's quite... I wish that he could listen to this and understand it and believe it in every detail of it as well. There's a very... I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is... I'm hoping that he gets elected, and I'm hoping that we're not going to get, like, scammed or tricked. I actually think that he's going to pretty much... hopefully, if he gets into government, I think that he's going to basically end up taking all these political parties to the cleaners. Like, like all these companies claim they sue the government for harming their future profits. I think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is probably going to be able to prosecute all these main political parties, like Biden. He's already said that Biden is rigging the elections and corrupt. Well, actually, this is it. He's already declared it. Robert F. Kennedy has already declared, he's declared that Biden's cheating. He said, Biden's rigged the system, he's cheating. But he hasn't, he hasn't actually taken legal action against him yet. If he gets into president position, he will actually be able to use the government departments to enforce, clarify the law, and say, this actually was against the law. And then he can use the government resources to bring justice, through government processes, and actually declare that a lot of the government, like the CIA as well, were actually acting illegally, which I actually believe the British political parties it's effectively what RFK said about Biden rigging the system. That's what they're doing in England, but not just the election system. They've actually rigged the council chamber sessions and how we perceive it. They've actually put this veneer, this kind of illusionary veneer up, so we actually believe that they're allowed to make decisions by a conscience that is possessed by a political party. And actually, it cannot be. It cannot be. It would be like having a jury possessed by a political party conscience. And if it was found to have been, if they were telling them how to inform and judge in a jury, that's illegal. And if they can even... It would be like disregarding the law. What it would be like is it would be like, Scotland's put all this insane, stupid work law through. But you can disregard that law, the legislation, as long as you judge each case on its merits, right, of who's turned up and what's been done. But your conscience, no, your conscience is ours, We've possessed your conscience, It's so really what these SNP and weird sturgeon parties are actually doing. They're not really wanting to they're not really wanting to put something down in law and say, no, you've got to comply with this and do this. What they're really wanting to do is steal and seize the conscience of the people. But the people don't have to act with their conscience. They act with their own conscience. Every time you get a new jury, it's a fresh set of consciences. And the reason you swap a jury now and mix it is so you get a clean conscience. Now, if Sturgeon and Braverman and all these people are wanting everyone to change their consciences, then that's going more back than changing the law. And in government, they're only licensed to change the law. They're not a registered religion. Religions change spirit. And the religion of England, through the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the government, even through the books in the government and the courts, is supposedly meant to be actually Christian, which is forgiveness. So you could say they're wanting people to not forgive people. And you could say that maybe Suella Braverman and Priti Patel, Rishi Sunak, maybe Sturgeon, Johnson, they're Scientologists. Maybe they want to erase forgiveness, like the Anonymous. The Anonymous don't forgive, we never forget. That's really what the Scottish government really want to do. We don't forgive, we don't forget. But they're only elected to change and make law. They aren't sworn in. Well, George Galloway is like, so help me God, but he isn't there to make a new religion. I think George Galloway is swearing in. Actually, I don't think they replaced the religion, did they? In courts, right, I've just remembered this is important for Galloway. In the courts, the oath, it says replaced by your given religion. Unless Galloway chose to say, so help me God. I'm wondering if it was a Sikh MP, he might have not had to say, so help me God. I'm thinking that George Galloway said that voluntarily. I don't think it was written down on the oath that the clerk held up in Parliament. I think it was to his own religion. But, you're getting into the territory of it with like Lord's Spiritual and Lord's Temple. And that you're actually getting into the territory of the Archbishop of Canterbury and the national religion now, really, because the conscience of the people, this is the thing, there were lots of arguments over your religion and your soul and conscience and belief, and there were fights and wars over it, and that's what the Bill of Rights is primarily in. They had the Court of Commission, Royal Commission, which they could just conjure it up when they wanted, and then they were cutting people's ears off. Now, if that ain't a hate crime, I don't know what is. There's free speech and there's cutting people's ears off. Sturgeon and the Scottish government are insane. I mean, the government, because people didn't comply to a religion with their conscience and they were wanting to change people's religion, they were putting people through court and cutting their ears off as a punishment. Now, nobody on the face of this fucking planet has said anything hateful at all, even if they're inciting it, or even suggesting that people might do it. It's not yet compulsory law. It used to be the law. We've removed the law that the actual government were cutting people's ears off because of their religious belief. So we've got to step forward that it was being enforced. No hate that you come out with gets enforced by a court as a compulsory punishment now. But these MPs are wanting to punish you in the courts for merely your conscience. Actually, I think what they're doing in the government is they're trying to make your conscience illegal, to have those. They're really trying to make it legal to express your thoughts and feelings, your conscience verbally, right? Which, that's got to be illegal. I think really the Bill of Rights prevents people from having their freedom of thought and speech encroached on. So therefore you can exercise a free conscience. Because if you can't speak your conscience, you can't express it. So what they're actually doing in Scottish Parliament, actually in a completely retarded and stupid, uneducated, and I would say professional negligent way, corrupt way a corrupt and illegal practice is that they've contravened the Bill of Rights and Magna Carta, and they're now legislating into the territory of the human conscience and the expression of it verbally, which is required to give back and return a verdict in a jury, and not even in Parliament, in local courts, and a petition in Parliament. So they've actually legislated into the expression of the conscience. So how can you express the conscience in court and give a return or witness or evidence as even an offender? You can't express your conscience because they're legislating into the freedom of speech of that conscience. I really think they've gone a step too far. I really think, people like Brandon, Sturgeon, not Sturgeon, J.K. Rowling, Rowling and R.F. Kennedy Jr. really need to do some kind of legal action and not through the normal courts. We're talking like Supreme Court and these other courts where these private companies have been trashing our health, and then when it affects their profits, then they've been suing the government. So, they really all need arresting, or at least putting through these corrupt and legal practices proceedings, a lot of these ministers. It says that they're not allowed to do that. It's illegal for ministers to do that. Ministers, it is illegal for them to take away free speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to hold meetings, like that's why the Public Meeting Act's there, and freedom of your spiritual religion and conscience, which is what a lot of those wars were about, the Protestant and Catholic faith and all this popish religion. And that's why, because of the expression of the conscience, and why juries still make decisions on their conscience. Really, the ministers and their political party agendas are taking possession of the people's conscience. It's kind of like witchcraft in a way. In a way, it's kind of like warlocks and witches. You could say some of them are foreign, but some of them are like, it's almost like Sturgeon, almost like, I'm not pointing at, Priti Patel for being an exotic, exotic witchcraft from far away, Turkish delightful witchcraft. But, witchcraft comes from near and far. Witchcraft comes from, Scottish Parliament. So it's witchcraft in a way. It's trying to take possession of the conscience. And I think, no matter, I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would have to say that if you've got a free conscience, you've got an it's protected through at least speech, if not action. No one's saying that, you can go around stabbing people or whatever. But I think that with the conscience, the human being vibrates, and I think speech is definitely something that was brought within a certain boundary of the conscience that was not allowed to be encroached on by the government, no matter where and when, particularly for political and legal purposes. So, I definitely now think that it's like a possession of attempting to take possession of the conscience. The thing is that they say that, we're trying to, the law, we're trying to make people behave this way or that way, but that's different to certain things that they do through their expression. There's a boundary that you don't go into with it. And at the end of the day, this brings in the whole World Economic Forum and wanting to reprogram people, genetic engineering of people. Mark Zuckerberg using his Ray-Ban goggles and mask to try and change the conscience and affect the conscience. It's almost like a conscience conditioner. This is why we've got to be very careful about what Zuckerberg's sending down his Ray-Ban virtual reality, his metaverse. Is it really like a washing machine for the conscience, taking you to the cleaners? And even if it was, what right do they have? You know, are we going to put all Hindus in there and make them come out like Eskimos? Are we going to get all criminals in there and make them come out like priests and popes? And, you know, does that mean that we can put all the Hindus in there and make them come out like Christian popes? You know, this is why, I mean, I just, for this country and for the war in the Middle East, right, I don't think that Rishi Sunak or Braverman or anyone else for that matter has the right to put Pope Francis or the Archbishop of Canterbury in the washing machine and then make him come out as Shiva, or take him to the cleaners and make him come out as, you know, the Prophet Muhammad, because he's really wanting to change his conscience and religion through the washing machine, the machine, through the metaverse. And I don't think they've got the right to do that. It's against... Are we in evolution and free evolution, or are we now under Larry Fink and Bill Gates designing the organism? And they aren't God. They aren't God. They are not here to program us and design us like a shopping bag. They're not. We will only exist because of free evolution. And unfortunately, some of these ministers now are on the opinion that they're going to take possession out of us and they're going to redesign the human race. And that really is what the argument is. In the past, it was an argument over Protestant and Catholic. They weren't even entertaining all these exotic religions, right? They weren't even entertaining Buddhism, Sikhism, or anything. It was just Protestant and Catholic. But now, all of the religions are under threat from science. We're going to end up, you know, does Dawkins have the right to put all of the religions in the cleaners and then come out all as Scientologists without a religion, you know? And maybe scientists don't have a conscience when they're experimenting on bunnies and rabbits and all this chemical manipulation of testing on animals. You know, that's Scientology with no conscience. Oh, it's in the name of science, you know. It's not in the name of spirit, you know. So that's where I am with it. I think back then, the big battle over free speech had a religious thing, but it was only like two religions, like mainly, you know, Protestant and Catholic. But what it was is, if you replace the word religion for conscience, it really was a war of the freedom. It was a fight for the freedom of the conscience. And as yet, the conscience of the court, the jury, is still free, right? But you wouldn't think that if all the councillors were possessed by political parties. That's not a free conscience. If they were possessed by anyone, they're possessed by the electorate, who can override and take possession of them lawfully with a referendum, you know? And really that's what happened to Mark Drakeford. I'll kind of finish on this point. Mark Drakeford got elected to represent the people of Wales and serve, and his own conscience would not do what the people wanted, even on a vote, even when they compelled him through the right to a referendum in Wales over that national speed limit. He would not be possessed by them, even though when that was by lawful due process. And he's resisting, and he stepped down because his conscience wouldn't get him to do it. Now, it says, I believe that in law that the referendum's prescribed and they've got to do it, but he wouldn't do it. So even if his replacement has to do it because it's prescribed in law, he had the right to, you know, at the end of the day, he wouldn't do what his conscience said. Now, that's interesting because the Scottish Government and the Nicola Sturgeon party, they don't believe that one free conscience has the right to ring true its feelings, right? Even if they're hateful, they want to make that against the law criminal, right? But when all the consciences of the entire country of Wales want to compel one person to do something because they've put it to the ballot, and then it says that, over 5% of Wales have clearly stated there should be a referendum in Wales over 20 mile an hour speed limits, he won't do it. So even when these MPs, these woke MPs, when everyone has a fair vote on one matter, one subject that they want them to, to do, they're refusing. Their conscience won't do it. Yet they want our conscience to do what they want just because they whapper through a couple of MPs, whapper through laws through. Now, I think that those woke MPs have clearly been outvoted in that Wales referendum petition. But they've had a lot less signatures just to get them into office. Yeah, they're putting all the law through. These people don't believe in obedience. They don't believe in the law. They don't believe in the law. They're lawless. They don't believe in law. They don't believe in lawful process or democracy. And they want to change people's consciences. But when everyone uses law, they won't do. Like Drakeford. So these people really are head cases. They're head cases, And I'm going to rock up at that polling station and I'm going to write down on that paper whatever the frick I want, right? And this government is corrupt. And this is where we are with it. More and more people are realising it, understanding it. Some of them are dumb. Some of them are sheep. Some of them don't get it. Some of them haven't got the capacity to understand it. Some of them are misled by they're groomed by their colleagues, right? And then other ones do understand it, and other ones do get it, and others get it but have a different opinion, but they've got the right to that opinion, right? What they want is they don't want people to have an opinion and a conscience or to be able to voice or express it. Effectively, what the Scottish Government, if someone, it's they effectively, if you're in a court and a jury and you basically hate the crime, you in a jury you can vote against it because you hate that crime. If you didn't hate the crime, you would like it. So you'd love that crime. You've got to be able to hate crime to come out with to give a return verdict in opposition to that crime. If you don't hate a crime, if you just think, I dislike it, or it's all right, you won't be compelled on a jury to come out with a return verdict so strongly against the crime unless you hate the crime. So in order to hate the crime, you gotta hate a crime in the first, otherwise they either love it, just dislike it, or is indifferent. If you've got a jury you just dislike a crime, but the evidence puts out that, maybe the crime was committed or wasn't committed, they're conscious. If evidence shows that maybe a person, right, wasn't guilty, but that jury can still vote with their conscience and disregard the law, they might kind of completely hate it, and if they can't express that hate in a verdict, they can only give a verdict I just dislike it. Is dislike a strong enough emotion to compel a verdict? Is indifference a strong enough emotion to compel a verdict? If people love murder, right? If juries started giving returns, right, on murder crimes because they loved murder, that's not hate crime. They might love murders. That's not hate. So if you love murders, this is where, for me now, it's just gone for Sturgeon and the Scottish government. They've just liquefied and just straight through the floorboards now. In my mind, they're gone. Because, right, you could have a load of people selected for a jury who love murder. How could you prosecute them for a hate crime if they love something, right? So, if they love murder, they could acquit every murderer in disregard of the law based on their conscience, right? So that just writes off the act that's just put people through because there's no hate there, particularly there's nothing stopping the jury loving murders. Nothing. So the Scottish government would have to make love illegal because it's too much strongly expressing an emotion of conscience. So they have to make love illegal. And they would have to have a jury who are only allowed to operate within the conscience of, it's all right, indifference. Now, I'm not too bothered either way. You can't have a jury with a weak conscience either way. They have to have a strong conscience. You know, that means the Scottish government want humans who just dislike. They're allowed to dislike. Is dislike of something enough to merit jury returns just on dislike? In order for certain cases for a jury to express their full conscience, they might need to really hate what happened. The facts and circumstances of what happened, they might really need to be compelled to hate it, to hate the actions of to be disgusted with, abhorrently opposed to the actions of the defendant to give a return. Because otherwise, they might be in the jury room, and if they're indifferent, they might not end up coming out with an opinion. They might be deliberating, and they might be disagreed because they don't feel strongly either way about it. You know? So I just don't think that... it's not racist because, I mean, if it was racist, I would be saying that this is a problem with, Sikhs or Islams or foreign people's consciences in our government. But this is the SNP. This is like Nicola Sturgeon, Alex Salmond, these sort of people, and a couple of those pimpernels who turn up in Parliament. You know, that guy who looks like, Bobby Shafter, whatever, that drain pole guy. Not even allowed to do name calling now. Drain pipe guy. Is he the leader of the SNP? Not Martin Day. Martin Day is one of them. That other guy, Beanpole. The Beanpole guy of the SNP who stands up, I am speaking on behalf of the Scottish government here, Mr. Woke, people like that. It's not racism, it's not foreign, it's just, they don't get it. They don't actually understand, They don't understand people or things. And that's down to education. It's down to the education of people, at the end of the day. So, I'm going to check the oath of the councillor. I don't know what it is. I'm going to check it. But I wanted to go through all the dictionary of all the terms for the grievance and aberrance and everything. I think that you could write off that Scottish law by saying that, it's perfectly okay under Scottish law for a jury to love a murder and acquit people. And I'd just stick one finger up. I'd stick the middle birdie up at the Scottish government and I'll say swivel, because they haven't got a clue what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand the dictionary. They don't understand language. They don't understand logic. They just don't understand. They need to go to GCSE school and, get a life. They need to stay in work in primary schools, making paper and printing pictures with children. They need to get a better job. They're not qualified to be in politics making legislation for the government of England. And this is the thing with Drakeford. The entire nation of Wales have cast a vote which compels a referendum 4 times more than the 5%. We've asked for it. They're refusing process. They're refusing procedure. The petition committee is illegal. They're compelled. And their conscience still, these people are disobedient. And they're the ones making the legislation. I really don't know who's voting for these people at the poll booth, but half the people aren't because they're not turning up. Less than half of the people are turning up to vote. You know, they're not turning up to vote. So how have they got the conscience of the people behind? It's like in a court having a jury verdict. They want 2/3 in the court. Now the judge is saying if he's not happy with the one person opposing, what he'll do is he'll say, I want to do it on 2/3 because the judge isn't happy with it. You know, is Mark Drakeford the one on the jury who you know, is he the Drakeford's like, you know, the one on the awkward one on the jury, but now he's standing down. He's standing down. There's no way these political parties have got 2/3 now because half's not turning up, right? So the standards that they're setting for court in criminal and civil proceedings, of which courts of civil requests, which is what they're doing in the council now, civil requests, right? They're not running it on a 2/3 standard, which they're demanding in criminal courts. They've stolen our jury in the magistrates' court. They've stolen our jury in the civil courts. They're making us have standards of 2/3 when then they don't reach the 2/3 standard for government. Sunak cannot get 2/3 to come up for the entire combination of parties together. He doesn't command 2/3 of the country now. He's lost the confidence and conscience of the nation. Now, if he wants to sue it, so, well, one person turned up to vote for Tory, we'll have it on one. We don't have to have 2/3. Well, who is the one now? Drakeford is standing down. Because when the people do come out to take possession of their elected individual that they've got the right to do, he will not do. What you've got are people, it's literally what you're dealing with is people like on The Exorcist, you know. I've got a little picture of Sticker App did a sticker with like a little character with his like head swivel around. It's quite funny. That's Drakeford. He won't do. It's like The Exorcist. You know what? With these people, they need exercising. They need you know. But the government are claiming that, oh no, it's the people who are doing the hate crimes who need exercising. But they're not in the business of the church, are they? It's not a religion. They're trying to exercise people using the law, but they're not religion. It's general guidelines for civil behaviour, general civil conduct in the city that the general people consider what average behaviour should be, right? And half of the people aren't that bothered about it either way. They're not vehemently, passionately opposed or against. But what you get is these MPs, they hate it. They hate it. They hate. We hate the opinion of these peoples. We hate them, you know, to a degree and amount, as much as you might have a jury who will have murder, who's saying that you don't or can't, you know. So it's illegal to, but that might be the conscience. They're really extremists. and you realise that when the vote, they believe in politics, they claim they believe in the political system. They claim we believe in the political system of voting and we want to represent it through votes. But when you vote them in, they don't. It turns out they don't believe in it. Drakeford doesn't believe in it. Because if you get 4,000 people coming back and saying, oh, we want a referendum on 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, we've got 4 times the amount required, then Drakeford should be, well, if that's what you want, have it. You know, that's what the polls say. But he's vehemently opposed, aberrantly. He's aberrantly opposed to it. He hates it. And that's not politics. That's not a politician. His conscience will not submit to the will of the polls. So he's not a politician. What Drakeford is, he's acting with his own conscience and religion, which is that, his own will. He doesn't believe in polls, voting, counting, politics, and open debate, which is the field of it's the field of activity of politicians. Poll is a vote. It's not a religion. What Nicola Sturgeon really needs to do, and Martin Day and the SNPs, and Drakeford, and Sunak, is they need to form a new religion. They need to form a new religion. And Priti Patel's banned people from turning outside abortion clinics with religions. If you are abhorrently opposed or hate abortion, you're not allowed to have a religious opinion outside a doctor's clinic. And even they're trying to make out that even if you're petitioning them to do it, you can get rid of your political opinion. They're operating on pure conscience and religion. They're not politicians. And then they're even banning other religions that they don't like from expressing their religion. Yet, in Parliament, they're trying to say, oh, we're not allowed to oppose other religions. We're supposed to accept them. But what's actually happening is a new religion is taking over that's stripping back Christian religion, stripping back forgiveness. It's even now trying to remove Sikhs, Islam, Hindus, and it is a Scientologist. It's a selfish. It's like, do unto as I will. And that is what Mark Drakeford's all about. Do as I will. I am the First Minister. Do as I say, not as the polls say, not even as these people, even they need to start their own religion and come out with it officially. Are they the Anonymous? Is it Satanism? Are they devil worshippers? Because, they don't seem to be into forgiveness because they're not forgiving hate crime. I have to ask the Archbishop of Canterbury, who are these? What do these people represent? Drakeford doesn't represent the polls, the votes. He's not a politician. So who does he represent? Is the Labour Party a Christian movement? Or is Keir Starmer now representing some Satanist, fascist cult that even wants to stamp out Christianity and Hinduism and Sikhs and Buddhists? I think that it is a selfish, it's a pure religion of the self, of the one. I want this to happen to everyone in the country and no compromise, not even when the polls dictate it and I claim to be a politician. So we got to, someone needs to, as far as I'm concerned, whatever the Scottish Government are putting through now is joke. It's a comedy act. It is a con sketch. It has zero value. It has zero effect under the Bill of Rights. It's subject to an immediate annulment. It has no effect. They're breaking the law. They're breaking political parties. The parties are illegal. You know, they're nulled. It's, political party membership is really subject to an annulment as people are getting elected, because they're becoming, their conscience are being erased from any political party alliance or allegiance, because the only allegiance they've got to have is to the king, right? To Charles, right? And according to law. So maybe they're all possessed by Charles. Maybe these are all the king's puppets, you know. Maybe George Galloway is the king's puppet, you know. Maybe I am. Maybe we all are. But the law which the king sets out and gives assent to says that, you know, we have a right to free conscience through legal process and other things, and in the Bill of Rights. So it's the allegiance to the king is meant to be allegiance to the law and the religious practice, which gives us our free conscience. And these politicians seem to be vehemently obsessed with taking that away. And they need to be... They're criminals. There's petty crime and there's serious crime. And these crimes are... these are corrupt and illegal practices, subversion of the rights and liberties of the realm, which they need legal action taken against them. And I've pretty much run out now. I've gone like 2 hours, 3 hours, just short of 3 hours now. It's not even going to be 3, because it's 2 hours, 59 minutes. And it was only supposed to be talking about the dictionary interpretation of hate. But I could, this one video, I could get someone to put dissertations and get professors and put a whole legal argument up for it. It is far-reaching, but it comes down to one thing. And that one thing is that I think my final argument and point is that they're trying to take possession out of the individual spirit and soul. And that's not polls. The polls are the free conscience in a fair vote on general matters of the public and civil law and legislation. And what they're actually doing is there's a forbidden area, and they've encroached into that forbidden area, and they're trying to take possession out of people, actually into their actually souls and spirits. And I think that, you know, mobile phones are a tool for that. And I think that the metaverse is going to be an even stronger tool. That's why we need to be extremely cautioned about it and extremely cautious about it. So I think I pretty much finished now. I don't know if I need to make that other video about the dictionary around the hate crimes.